Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. I was watching uh, a video of DJ Khaled. Excuse me, not DJ Khaled, DJ Vlad talking about his comments on on Drake and DJ Khaled not commenting on Israel versus Palestine. It was an interview with TK Kirkland where he was basically saying that Drake or DJ Khaled or Drake and DJ Khaled should comment on this whole not Israel versus Palestine, but like Israel versus Hamas situation. And I wanted to give my thoughts on what I think about uh, them not commenting on it as a person who follows this conflict as well as a Drake fan. I was never really a fan of DJ Khaled, but I am a fan of Drake, and why I feel like these guys don't need to comment on this situation. For one, uh, Drake is yes, he's half Jewish, and technically, by the halakhic law of Judaism, he is an actual Jew, but with a Jewish mother. But I don't feel like he needs to comment on this situation because this is a very sticky situation. For one, this conflict has been going on for 106 years. I date the start of the conflict to 1917, which is roughly when the Balfour Declaration was signed, Britain's declaration to create a Jewish state. Now, some would say that the conflict started earlier than that, in the 1880s or the early 1900s, when Zionists from Eastern Europe, mostly Poland and Ukraine and other parts of Eastern Europe, much like Vlad's family, Vlad is Ashkenazi Jewish. And Drake's mother is Ashkenazi Jewish. Most of the Jewish people that we know as Jewish people are Ashkenazis. We know that there, of course, Mizrahim and Sephardim, they make up the majority of the Israeli population. But the early Zionists, let's be real, and the architects of the Jewish state as we know it were all Ashkenazim. All the prime ministers have been Ashkenazim. Basically, everyone basically has been Ashkenazim since the very start of the Jewish state. I mean, they didn't they didn't really they didn't really intend to even have really Jews from Yemen or Jews from Morocco or Jews from all those other places in the Jewish diaspora within the Muslim world even there. You know what I mean? The hardest places hit by anti-Semitism were Eastern European places and Germany, Eastern and Central European places, as well as Germany. So these were the architects of the Jewish state, and these were the main populations hit by it. Now, why I don't feel that Drake or DJ Khaled should comment. One, both Drake and DJ Khaled were born here in North America. Drake is from Canada. He's a native of Toronto. He represents Toronto. He doesn't just being him being a Jewish person. He doesn't represent the entirety of world Jewry. Neither does DJ Khaled represent the entirety of Palestinian. They are part of the music industry. Let's say take DJ Khaled for example. DJ Khaled is a Muslim. He's a Palestinian, of course, but he's part of the music industry, an industry that is basically run by Jewish people. We talked about it before. that when Jewish people started to come to America in the late 1800s, just like when they started Ashkenazi Jews. We're talking about Jews from the Pale of Settlement, right? Not other Jews from other places, but the Jews from the Pale of Settlement. When they started to come here to America, because there was anti-Semitism here in America, they set up shop mostly in the entertainment industry, and they've been pretty dominant in the entertainment industry, especially in the music business, especially in African American types of music such as rap. You know what I mean? So if DJ Khaled makes something in support of the Palestinian people, he then could be blacklisted. Now let's talk about Drake. Why Drake, being a Jewish person, wouldn't want to make, say, a pro-Israeli post, and why he would be blacklisted. He is part of course, the African American community. With the African American community, mostly, especially post 1967, when the global left really started to turn on the Zionist movement. A lot of people within the Black Power movement identified with anti colonialism and view the Zionist project, view the Zionist endeavor, especially with the Zionists occupying the territories of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip in a black and white dichotomy. They see it as similar to how they saw the decolonization of Algeria or the decolonization of Angola or the anti apartheid movement. The global left, which the rap community and hip hop are a part of, mostly aligns with the Palestinians. So Drake, if he were to align with his ethnicity and his ethnic side, would mostly align with the Palestinian side. I mean, he would be blacklisted by the global left and by other black people. He doesn't want to do that because he has an album coming out. So both guys are in a precarious position. Here you have DJ Khaled, an Arab American. He doesn't want to take the pro Arab side, the pro Palestinian side, because the people who run him are mostly Jewish and he'll be viewed as anti Semitic, right? And he doesn't want to be blacklisted and labeled as anti Semitic. And Drake doesn't want to side with the Jewish people because he'll be labeled as Islamophobic. He's in a community that has a lot of Muslims in it, the African American community, and even those that aren't Muslims tend to side in an do it through an anti-colonialist lens, and they'll blacklist him for being a sellout. So both guys want to play it safe and not take a position because they don't want to end up offending either side. Now, and again, they don't really have to because it isn't like Drake family is part of a settlement, right? And he's not a Sabra, he's not a native born Israeli, right? He's a Canadian Jewish person who's only half Jewish and he more identifies with more so his black side, right? DJ Khaled is in an African American medium that is run mostly by Jewish people in the entertainment industry, but he grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, right? So you have one guy who grew up in Louisiana, one guy who grew up in Canada. They have Jewish roots, they have Palestinian roots, but they might not even be learned on the conflict all that much. I'm pretty sure DJ Khaled has more of a familiarity with it because Palestinian people, the Nakba is part of their ethnic heritage. Both of these peoples, both of these ethnicities have experienced tremendous tragedy. You have the Palestinian side, the Nakba, right? The dislocation in 1948 after the establishment of the State of Israel. But before that, also in the 1940s, you have the thing that precipitated the creation of the Jewish state or the full endorsement of the project of a Jewish state by the United Nations and other other governing bodies, which was the Holocaust, right? So if you're Drake, you don't want to seem like you're pro Nakba, right? The dislocation of the Palestinian people, because there's a lot of Palestinians and a lot of other Arabs that work within the entertainment industry as well. They shell out big bucks in places like Dubai and places like Saudi Arabia to get rappers and entertainers, right? So you don't want to appear like that if you're Drake, but also if you're DJ Khaled, you don't want to appear too pro Arab because you might seem pro Nazi ish, right? And it's a stance that a lot of people are taking because under both the right and the left, you have people that are anti-Islam and anti-Semitic. You know what I mean? And you don't want to appear as anti either one. Now, could they make a generic statement and could they say uh, could they say, for example, I'm against the bombings, right? I'm against what happened with when Hamas invaded uh, the music festival. Yeah, they could say that something like that, but what's the point of saying something like that? People want them to come out and make a statement. People want them to come out and have DJ Khaled wave the Palestinian flag, or have Drake waving the Israeli flag and putting up a Star of David on his avatar on Instagram or whatever. People don't want when they say they should come out and make a statement. They're not talking about a generic a generic blanket statement condemning all forms of violence. Right? They're talking about a specific statement siding with one group or the other, identifying with one group's historic trauma, the Nakba, or the other group's historic trauma, the Holocaust, right? Saying, for example, that they understand the plight, the historic plight of the Palestinian people being kicked out of their home and having to hold the keys to their home. Now, of course, if DJ Khaled were to say something like that, of course you would have Israelis and Jewish Americans too coming on saying, "Well, no, that's not what happened." The Arab governments, the other Arab governments that invaded Israel after they declared independence on May 14th, 1948, they intimidated the Arab citizens. They told them to leave their homes, and Israel actually wanted them, according to the Israeli version of history. There's counter-Israeli narratives on the formative years, like read the likes of Benny Morris and Ilan Pappé, right? Israeli historians themselves, but they're telling a counter narrative. They say no. You had earlier incidents like the Deir Yassin massacres, which took place in, in April 9th, 1948, way before the Declaration of Independence of Israel, like a month before or a couple of weeks before that, right? um, that it wasn't just because of the war. The Israelis weren't as dovish as they portrayed. They were actually initiating conflicts so the Palestinians could leave, which makes sense because I mean the whole point of the Zionist movement was to establish a state of predominantly Jewish and democratic people. A Jewish, as Israel puts it, a Jewish and democratic state. That was the whole point of Israel. So you couldn't have a majority Arab state. If you could, if if my question to Israelis and people that support Israel is, if the Arabs were allowed to stay, would they have let them stay? Of course, they let some Arabs to stay. I mean, you do have Arab citizens, you have Arab Israelis, you have Arab citizens or Palestinian Israelis. Um, People of Palestinian descent within Israel, right? That live within Israel as a minority status within Israel. But the whole point of Israel is that it's an ethno state. It's a majority. It's meant to be a majority Jewish state. Whether they forced them out or killed them or whatever, it was going to happen because you cannot have a Jewish state in a region where that was majority Arab for centuries. Now, whether or not there was a state of Palestine, there was an official government of Palestine, no, of course there wasn't. There was never, and see, that's the thing where people, that's where it gets a little bit murky because there was never a ethnicity known as just Palestine or Palestinians. Of course, Palestine during from time immemorial was governed as a region, even during the Roman period of Palestine, before the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 A.D. and before the expulsion of the Jewish people in 134 A.D. after the Bar Kokhba revolt. Palestine was still a region. Jordan was included in that. Southern Syria was included in that. Even Lebanon was included in that. Basically, all of what we know as the Levant, what is known in Latin as the Levant, all of the Eastern Mediterranean, which the Arabs call Balad al Sham, all of this region was the region of Palestine. There was like three different governments during the Roman period in Palestine. Jordan was included in that. It wasn't all Jewish. You had non-Jewish people. Mostly during antiquity, there were Greek-speaking people. So yes, now you want to say, okay, they had a state. They, being the Jewish people, had a state in that area of the world during the time of King David, King Solomon. First of all, okay, then uh, uh, you're talking about something from the Bible. You know what I mean? Something that is a matter of faith. It's something that's accepted by Muslims, Jews, and Christians, all three. But if you're talking from a historic secular standpoint, that cannot be verified with evidence. The only thing that can be verified with evidence, as far as a legality, as far as a legal entity, when it comes to Jewish ownership of that particular part of Palestine, uh, the Judean hills, is mostly uh, the Hasmonean state. That goes back to like 146. So I'm not disputing that there was ever Jewish claims to the land. Of course there were. But the fact of the remains that whether you call them Palestinians or whether you call them Arabs or whether you call them Levantines, Syrians, whatever you call them, from the point from the time of the 630s, people that speak the Arabic language, Arabic speaking people were the predominant people. Now, whether or not it was a flourishing area, whether or not it was a metropolis, whether or not it was a global superpower, or even the seat of power in either in any empire, the Umayyads, the closest is the first Umayyad Empire, because that was governed in Damascus, and that was governed. The seat of the power there was the Eastern Mediterranean. From there it moved to the Abbasids, which was Damascus. Then you had Cairo, which was the Ayyubids and the Fatimids and the Mamluks. And then you had, of course, Istanbul, which was the seat of power there was uh, the seat of the power of the Ottoman Empire. You know, so it's true that Palestine was never a separate entity. It was always part of a larger empire, but it was part of a region that the Ottomans, the Mamluks, the Ayyubids, the Fatimids, and even the Crusader. Well, the Crusaders did have a seat of power there. It was the Crusader states, and it was governed from the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So, I guess you could say that from 1099, July of 1099 to July of 1887, there was an administrative power there, and it was, and, during recorded times, it was the Crusaders. And of course, like I said, the Jewish claim, to me, I would date the Jewish claim to the at least the Hasmonean period, or the first exile, right? Solomon and and David. And I'm not gonna go that far back. You know what I mean? Because that's a matter of faith, in my opinion. But the Jewish claim is older than the Palestinian claim, but it doesn't change the fact that the Palestinians have been, or the Arabs, or whatever you want to call them, have been living there since the time of the Islamic conquest. Whether or not they called it Palestine, whether or not they called it Fantasy Land, I don't care what they called it. They were living there, and the modern day Zionist movement only dates back to the 1880s. Now, people could say, oh, well, Jewish people were always living there. Even after they were exiled, they were allowed to come back several times, several different empires, especially the Muslim ones, because of the cordial relations that Islam and Judaism had during the Middle Ages. That's true. They were always living there, of course, because it's this a very the holiest place on earth is the Temple Mount when it comes to the Jewish religion. But were they governing there? No. Were the Arabs governing there? No. But there were more Arabs than there were Jews. So, of course, if they wanted to come in from Europe and establish a Jewish state, they would have to get the Arabs out somehow. So people that deny that the intention of the Zionist project was to eradicate the land of most of the Arabs, not all, but most of the Arabs, are in complete denial of what exactly Zionism was. Zionism was an attempt to establish a Jewish state in a region of the world that was majority Jewish, because no region of the world was majority Jewish. Jewish people were and have been until 1948 a minority in every single country, in both Muslim civilizations and Christian European civilizations. This is just a pure fact of history. How they were planning to do it without a massive transfer of people, such as we saw in India and Pakistan, I don't know. How do you make that happen? You have to get rid of them somehow. Whether or not it was justified, I don't know. I know that there have always been. Uh, I see the justifications behind Zionism, but I see that I know from history there have been mass. Uh, there have been mass exterminations of Jewish people all throughout history, and that they felt the aim of the Zionist movement was not an ethnic displacement; it was a place for Jewish people to feel safe and the Jewish people to feel at home, and the Mizrahi Exodus and the Ethiopian Exodus in the 80s and 90s, and even the exodus of Soviet Jews from the Soviet Union. If it wasn't for Israel, right, those people would have been those people would have nowhere to go, right? After the fall of the Soviet Union, or after um, the mistreatment in Ethiopia or the mistreatment in the Arab countries. Well, it could be argued if that Israel never existed, maybe there wouldn't have been the mass exodus of the Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. I mean, they were living not just fine. I mean, I know in places like Morocco, in places like Algeria, there were ghettos too. You know what I mean. I'm not going to pretend like the Muslims were this benign force. I know there were demi laws. I know there was discrimination, especially in Morocco and North Africa. Where there wasn't a large percentage of there wasn't a large percentage of Christians, so they couldn't really persecute the Christians, but there was a large percentage of Jewish people, right? So I know there was discrimination against the Jewish people, but I'm saying mass expulsions of Jewish people, I doubt that would have happened if Israel would have never been established. I mean, they would have just lived as second class citizens. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that Sephardi and Mizrahi people are the majority in Israel now, and it's moving because of their influence in politics is moving to the right because maybe they feel like for generations they were discriminated against by the Muslims, by the Arabs, and they want to re shit on, if you will, get revenge, if you will, on the Arab population by discriminating against them in the same way that they were discriminated against in their countries. I don't know. You know what I mean? But as far as DJ Khaled and Drake making videos and making comments about it, there's no need. They're part of diaspora civilizations, a diaspora Jew and a diaspora Palestinian. They themselves didn't experience the Nakba. They themselves didn't experience the Holocaust. They themselves did not experience being being expelled from either the Palestinian, you know, Israel Palestine, or being expelled from the Arab countries, or being expelled from Eastern Europe. They didn't experience these things. So for them to make comments on and act like they're all pro Palestinian or they're pro Arab or pro Jewish or pro Israeli would be disingenuous. And he said in the video with TK Kirkland, I gotta say, made a very smart statement. TK Kirkland said he don't discuss politics and he don't discuss religion, and at the root of this is politics as well as religion. Politics mixed with religion, which is a toxic combination, right? But he said if Tupac were alive, invoking the name of Tupac, somebody who was not here to defend himself, Tupac would have said something if it's something he cared about. Yeah, Tupac made a lot of comments as it pertains to the um, the the historic discrimination of black Americans by white Americans because it's something that Tupac experienced as a black man in America. This is not something that Drake is experiencing directly as a Jewish person. He's not a Jewish Israeli. He's not on the front lines. He's not serving in Gaza. He's not serving in the West Bank. He's not losing family members in kibbutz. He's not losing family members in any of the Israeli settlements in the West Bank or on the border with Gaza. He's not, and DJ Khaled is a Palestinian American that lives in the United States. It's a bad comparison. You know what I mean? It's a false equivalency. Tupac would have commented on the situation of black Americans because he himself is a black American. He himself was experiencing discrimination at the hands of police as a black man. But Eminem's not going to make those comments as a secondary observer as a white man in America because it'd be like Burner Boy making a comment or one of the dancehall artists like making a comment about that sort of thing. Because they might be black too, you know what I mean? But they're black from a different country. You know what I mean? They're part of an African American diaspora. They're not part of the African American FBA experience here in the United States. So they can only know from it secondhand, just like Khaled can with the Palestinians and Drake can with the Jewish people. So, and here's another hypocritical thing when it comes to Vlad. Vlad is a Ukrainian American, right? When Russia invaded the Ukraine last year, I didn't see a lot of videos from Vlad talking about the Russia Ukraine situation, talking really about the history of how Ukrainians, especially the Tartars, were basically massacred and removed from their territory in the Crimea by the Stalinist regime during the 1930s. I didn't see any of that from DJ Khaled. During that time, in 2022, all I saw him post was shit about rappers like he normally does. you know, you know what I mean? So he wants others to speak on conflicts relating to their ethnic affiliation, but he's a Ukrainian. He didn't speak on behalf of his team. You know what I mean? He didn't. I didn't see him with the yellow and blue Ukrainian flag. You know what I mean? And if he did, it wasn't plastered all over his big channel. Vlad is a huge hypocrite. Like I said, when I have a video on it, when he basically lambasted um, Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's not somebody that identifies with Judaism at all. Considers himself an ethnic Jew, right? He only brings up the fact that he's Jewish to gain some kind of brownie points with his African American audience. Alan Dershowitz, he got Alan Dershowitz on there, but he never got somebody with a pro-Palestinian stance on there. He never would get a Norman Finkelstein on there. He never would get somebody with some kind of uh, affiliation of the Palestinians to explain the Palestinian situation on there. Only Alan Dershowitz, who's completely pro-Israeli and pro-Jewish on there. So Vlad has already picked his team, and that's fine. You know what I mean? He's a Jewish guy, whatever, but he wants other people to pick a side. He wants other people to stick their necks out, and that just isn't fair. You know what I mean? Trying to make Drake seem like the bad guy, saying that, oh, Drake is here giving Joe Buttons a hard time because Joe Buttons is talking about shit that directly relates to Drake. The shit that DJ Khaled wants Drake to talk about is something that's not affecting Drake's life directly. Peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button. See you in the next video.